He dumped me over a 3-sentence text message. No warning, no explanation. Just, this isn't working anymore. Don't call me. I stared at my screen, frozen, heart caving in, wondering how someone I trusted with my whole future could be that cruel. But heartbreak has a way of lighting fires you never knew you had. Because 10 months later, that same man looked up in the middle of Times Square and saw my face on a giant billboard. I didn't chase him. I didn't cry for closure. I became unforgettable by becoming unstoppable. And this is how I did it. We were engaged for 6 months, and I thought I was living inside the kind of love story people write novels about. Daniel wasn't just my fiancé, he was my best friend, my partner in everything. We'd met at a wedding 2 years earlier, danced to a slow song neither of us knew, and never really stopped dancing after that. He proposed on a weekend trip to Lake Tahoe, on a dock with string lights and our favorite playlist softly playing from a nearby speaker. It was picture perfect. I said yes, and I meant it with my whole heart. The wedding was set for June. My Pinterest board had become a full-blown blueprint. My dress was already fitted. My mom cried when I picked it out. We were tasting cakes, arguing over linen shades, and sending out save the dates. Everything felt so certain, until it wasn't. I wish I could say there were clear warning signs. But the truth is, they were subtle, small things that didn't seem worth fighting about. He stopped texting me good morning. He'd forget to call when he worked late. When I showed him centerpiece ideas or gushed about the honeymoon itinerary, his responses were distracted. Flat, like he was in the room, but already halfway out the door. I remember asking him once, "Are you okay?" And he just kissed my forehead and said, "Just tired." And I believed him, because love makes you trust even the silence. Then came that Tuesday morning. I'll never forget it. I was brushing my teeth, mentally reviewing my to-do list for the day, when my phone buzzed with a message from Daniel. It was short, 3 sentences. "This isn't working anymore. I can't do this. Don't call me." That was it. My heart stopped. I read it again, thinking maybe I misunderstood. That this was a mistake. A prank. A wrong number. But when I tried to call him, it rang once, then voicemail. I tried again. Blocked. I checked Instagram. Gone. Facebook. Gone. Even LinkedIn. He'd erased me with the kind of precision people usually reserve for enemies. 1 minute we were planning a future. The next, I was a ghost in my own life. I broke. There's no poetic way to describe it. I cried until my voice gave out. I sat on the kitchen floor for hours, clutching my phone like it could explain what I'd done wrong. I didn't eat. I didn't shower. I didn't speak to anyone for days. My best friend came over and refused to leave. My mom kept bringing soup and soft tissues. People said the usual things: "He didn't deserve you, you'll find someone better, time heals everything." But nothing landed. I didn't want someone better. I wanted the man I thought he was. I wanted the wedding we planned. I wanted answers he would never give me. And worst of all, I still loved him, even as he vanished without a trace. The days that followed felt like walking through a minefield of memories. Everything reminded me of him. The cafe near my apartment still had the same almond croissants we used to split on Sundays. A guy on the subway wore his cologne once, and I nearly cried into my scarf. Even scrolling through Instagram felt like emotional whiplash: engagement announcements, honeymoon selfies, flashbacks of my own filtered happiness with Daniel. I couldn't escape him, not in the city, not in my apartment, not even in my own mind. I started going on long walks, hoping the motion would shake the pain loose. I filled a notebook with pages of questions I couldn't answer. Was I not enough? Was I too much? Was there someone else? The silence he left behind screamed louder than any explanation. I kept trying to retrace our last months, digging through every conversation, every shift in his tone, every glance that might have hinted he was slipping away. But there was no big moment, no fight, no betrayal I could pinpoint. Just a slow fade into rejection. Eventually, my best friend insisted I talk to someone. Therapy was awkward at first, just me and a stranger in a beige room while I tried not to unravel in front of her. But she listened, really listened, and slowly, I started to unravel in a way that was necessary. She helped me see the cycle I was stuck in, trying to make sense of someone else's cowardice by blaming myself. I started noticing just how much I had shrunk in that relationship. The way I always asked permission to speak my mind. The way I held back my dreams because I didn't want to stress him out. The way I molded myself into what I thought he wanted, without realizing how far I'd wandered from who I really was. One night, after I broke down over something stupid, like the wine glass he left behind, my best friend looked at me, dead serious, and said, "You forgot who you are." That hit me harder than anything Daniel ever said. Because she was right. I had forgotten. I wasn't just some girl who got dumped over text. I wasn't disposable. I was smart, creative, kind, loyal. I was someone worth staying for, and more importantly, someone worth fighting for. I just had to remember how to fight for myself again. I don't know what exactly shifted. It wasn't a dramatic movie moment, no swelling music or sudden clarity. It was more like a whisper inside me that grew louder day by day. I was tired of crying. Tired of letting someone who walked away still control how I felt every time I opened my eyes. I didn't want to be stuck in the waiting room of grief anymore. I needed to move. So I did something small, almost silly. I picked up my old camera. It had been sitting on the shelf collecting dust, untouched since college. Photography used to be my escape, my therapy before I even knew what therapy was. I'd get lost chasing light, finding stories in faces, textures in everyday life. Back then, I even dreamed of turning it into a career, but life happened. Jobs, bills, relationships. And Daniel never really encouraged it. He called it a cute hobby once, and I never touched it again after that. But now, I grabbed my camera like it was a lifeline. I started by taking pictures on my walks, sunlight on cracked pavement, steam curling from coffee cups, reflections in store windows. Nothing revolutionary. But when I uploaded them to Instagram, something strange happened. People responded. Not with pity, not with fake support, just genuine comments. "Love this shot. There's something so peaceful about your work." It felt like I was waking up a version of myself I'd buried years ago. Little by little, I built confidence. I stopped obsessing over filters and likes and started focusing on expression. I even created a separate account for my photography, just to see where it might lead. Then, out of nowhere, a local boutique messaged me. They'd seen my photos and asked if I'd be interested in shooting their new line for social media. It wasn't a big job, and the pay was basically lunch money, but I said yes so fast I nearly dropped my phone. That shoot changed everything. It wasn't just about the pictures. It was about standing behind the lens, directing, creating, building something from nothing. I hadn't felt that in control of anything in months. The boutique loved the photos. They posted them, tagged me, and suddenly other small businesses started reaching out. What started as a coping mechanism was quietly becoming a path forward. And for the first time in a long time, I wasn't looking for validation from anyone. Not Daniel, not strangers online, not even my therapist. I was doing this because I loved it. Because I could. Because it reminded me that there was still so much inside me that he never got the chance to know, and maybe never even deserved to. I was no longer trying to get back to who I was before the breakup. I was starting to become someone entirely new. Once the wheels started turning, I didn't slow down. I poured everything into my work. Mornings started with coffee and editing sessions, afternoons were for shoots, sometimes unpaid, sometimes just for practice, but all of it added to my growing portfolio. I treated every project, no matter how small, like it was the most important one I'd ever done. Not out of desperation, but out of hunger, this quiet, burning need to build something that was mine and mine alone. Opportunities started to show up the way they always do after consistent work, slowly, then all at once. A makeup artist tagged me in a shoot she loved. A fitness brand asked if I could do lifestyle photography for their new campaign. Then one day, I got an email from a mid-sized agency in the city. They'd seen my work online and wanted to meet. I thought it was spam at first. Me? Really? But it was real. I walked into that meeting with shaking hands and walked out with a signed contract. I wasn't just shooting for local boutiques anymore. I was now officially represented. Within weeks, they had me doing photos for minor magazines, brand lookbooks, even a small feature in a fashion editorial blog. I started seeing my photos in places I used to scroll through while dreaming on the sidelines. But strangely enough, the fame, or what little came with it, wasn't what filled me up. What did was the feeling of walking into a room, camera in hand, and knowing exactly who I was and what I brought to the table. I wasn't trying to prove anything to anyone anymore. I was just doing what I loved, and doing it well. That shift, the one no one sees, is the one that matters most. I started glowing, and not in the cheesy, motivational poster kind of way. I mean it literally. My skin cleared. My posture changed. I started dressing differently, not to impress, but because I felt good in my body again. My laugh returned, louder than before. I was working harder than I ever had, and yet somehow I felt lighter. Free. Emotionally, I'd stopped carrying the weight of Daniel's rejection like a wound. It became a scar, still visible, still real, but no longer painful. If anything, it reminded me of how far I'd come. I'd been shattered, yes. But piece by piece, I'd built something stronger from the ruins. Not a comeback. Not revenge. A rise. One that no one could take from me. And the best part? I didn't need anyone else to see it for it to be real. But someone was about to. And he'd see it in a way no one could ignore. I was editing photos in my apartment, half listening to a podcast, when my phone rang with a number I didn't recognize. I almost let it go to voicemail, but something told me to answer. A woman introduced herself as a creative director for a major campaign launching in New York. She'd seen my work online and through the agency, and said they weren't just looking for a photographer, they were looking for a face. Mine. At first, I actually laughed. Wait, you mean me in front of the camera? I asked. Yes, she replied. You've got something real. Confident, but soft. People will connect with you. I hung up the phone and just stood there in the middle of my kitchen, heart racing. It felt too big. Too fast. I wasn't a model. I was just a girl who'd been healing through a lens. And now they wanted my face on a billboard. In Times Square. Imposter syndrome wrapped around me like a storm cloud. Who was I to say yes to this? I wasn't famous. I wasn't flawless. I wasn't anything Daniel would have ever imagined on a 40-foot screen. But maybe that was the point. So I said yes. The day of the reveal, I showed up wearing a thrifted blazer and second-hand heels, holding a coffee I could barely sip because my hands wouldn't stop shaking. I stood in the crowd, trying to look casual, pretending I wasn't watching the giant screens like a kid waiting for Christmas. And then it happened. There I was, full color, full frame. My face. My name. My work. All of it, blazing across Times Square like it had always belonged there. I felt my breath catch. My eyes burned. I bit my lip so I wouldn't cry in front of strangers. But inside I was sobbing with pride. Because I remembered, clear as day, sitting on my kitchen floor 10 months earlier, holding my phone after reading that cold, gutting text. This isn't working anymore. Don't call me. Now here I was. Not just surviving, but shining. And for the first time, I didn't feel like I had to prove anything. Not to him, not to anyone. I was finally enough. Always had been. I just needed the space to see it. A few days after the billboard went up, I was back home editing photos when my phone buzzed with a message from an old mutual friend I hadn't heard from in months. It was a screenshot. Grainy, taken from a distance, but there was no mistaking it. It was me. On 7th Avenue. Towering above a sea of yellow taxis and blinking lights. Underneath the image, the message read, is this you? I smiled, typing back. Yep. Crazy, right? They replied. Daniel saw it. My heart paused. Not dropped, not panicked. Just paused, like a moment of stillness before a wave. Apparently, he had been in the city for a work conference. He walked through Times Square with a colleague and looked up, and there I was. Looking down. Unbothered. Unreachable. I didn't think about him much anymore. Not the way I used to. He had become like a bad dream I no longer tried to interpret. But knowing he saw that billboard felt like the universe handing me a mirror. Not for him. For me. Later that night, he messaged me. It was the first time I'd seen his name pop up since he blocked and disappeared all those months ago. His message was simple. Wow. I didn't know you were doing this well. I stared at the words for a while. My chest didn't tighten. My stomach didn't flip. There was no revenge fantasy fulfilled, no butterflies, no anger. Just calm. I didn't reply. I didn't need to. Because his message wasn't really about me. It was about him realizing what he'd thrown away. But I wasn't that girl anymore. The one who needed his validation or explanations. The girl he abandoned had grown roots, then wings. Closure didn't come in the form of his regret. It came from the silence I chose. From knowing I'd rebuilt everything he'd shattered without ever asking him to look back. And in that silence, I found peace. True, lasting peace. Not because he saw me win, but because I no longer needed him to. If you've ever been broken by someone you trusted, really broken, you know it doesn't happen all at once. It happens in 1,000 tiny ways. The texts that stop. The warmth that fades. The way they start looking through you instead of at you. And then one day, you're left with nothing but questions and silence and the haunting feeling that maybe you were the problem. That was me. But here's the truth I learned the hard way. Heartbreak didn't break me. It revealed me. It peeled away the parts of me that were performing, pleasing, shrinking. It forced me to face the woman underneath all the compromise. The one who had dreams before him. Fire before him. Confidence that didn't rely on someone else's approval. Losing Daniel didn't destroy me. It showed me who I actually am when no one's watching and there's no one left to impress. And that version of me? She's fierce. She's grounded. She's whole. I won't pretend it was easy. Healing never is. It's messy and unglamorous and slow. Some days, I hated myself for still loving him. Some days, I hated him for making me hate myself. But eventually, those feelings passed. Like weather. They came and went, and through it all, I just kept walking forward, one painful, determined step at a time. And if you're in that place right now, I want you to hear this. Their rejection does not define your worth. You are not hard to love. You are not too much. You are not disposable. The people who walk away from you are doing you a favor. They're clearing space for you to finally come home to yourself. You don't need revenge. You don't need to prove anything to them. Just rise. Quietly, powerfully. Let your glow up speak in ways your words never could. You don't have to destroy them to win. You just have to stop letting what they did define who you are. The night after Daniel saw my billboard, I went back to Times Square. Not for anyone else. Just for me. I stood across the street, surrounded by the chaos of the city, and looked up at my face glowing in lights and motion. But that wasn't the part that made me smile. I smiled because, for the first time in a very long time, I knew who I was. And I didn't need a single person's permission to feel proud of that. Sometimes, the people who break us the worst end up giving us the greatest gift, freedom. When my fiancé left, I thought it was the end of everything. But it was actually the beginning of me, my voice, my power, my purpose. That billboard wasn't revenge. It was a symbol of everything I rebuilt from the ashes. If someone ever makes you feel small or unworthy, don't let it define you. Rise anyway, because one day they'll see you shining and know they let go of something extraordinary.